The natives of Virgo and Scorpio are together the marvelous Eden of which the Bible talks to us about. The natives of Scorpio possess terrible magical powers. The natives of Scorpio are irritable, rancorous, and vindictive. However, by dominating anger, vengeance, and rancor, the natives of Scorpio can transform themselves into powerful and terrible white magicians.
I'm going to start this lesson off with the 4 personality types in modern astrology. The first thing that I want to mention about self-pity, embarrassment, shame, being insecure about what other people think of you is that this is an imbalance of energy. It is the case that people with a lot of feminine energy, whose dominant personality types are amiable and analytical, tend to struggle with self-esteem. And it's not a sexist statement. This is just the nature of these types of energies. And the masculine energies also have their negative traits or shortcomings. This is because people with these energies in their psyche have an innate attention to detail. In fact, this is the strength of these 2 types. The analytical disposition endows a person with craftsmanship and stubborn dedication. The amiable or a supportive nature is observant and empathetic. And people like this have a strong emotional capacity, including emotions like remorse and compassion. But all strengths have their equal and opposite negative traits. So when feminine energy is exaggerated or out of balance, this quality of mind can cause a person's awareness to become very narrow and fixated on minor observations. The end result becomes insecurity, overthinking, taking things too personally, perfectionism, embarrassment, and overly critical perception. So my first recommendation is to consider whether or not you have an innate abundance of feminine energy. And the way to find this out is, in fact, through your astrology. Yes, the 4 personality types that psychology uses to explain to us is, in fact, just a rebranding of the 4 astrological elements of nature, these being earth, water, air, and fire. They correspond with each other the same way. So the way to find out which 4 personality types you have most prominently, because it's a mixture in it, it's always a mixture in us, is by finding out your personality placements. These are your sun sign, your moon sign, and your rising sign. But without going into extensive detail, your sun sign is who you are on the outside, what you present to people. It's responsible for much of your self-expression, your taste, and your thinking. Your moon sign is your other half. It's who you are on the inside. It's your subconsciousness, your desires, your fears, and your deepest animal instincts and impulses. This human species is 97% subconsciousness or ego. So the moon sign is a very significant part of who we are as well. The rising sign is the sun's position at the hour in which we were born. You can think of it like a spice. It adds a dash of flavor and personality, but doesn't have the major influence that the sun and moons have. So when we look up our astrology, if one of these signs, particularly the sun or moon, are in or anywhere near Virgo, Taurus, Pisces, Scorpio, or any other feminine sign, this can be a big contributor as to why your feelings of self-criticism, insecurity, and embarrassment are very strong. And of course, you have to always consider any cusps or nearby signs by looking at the degrees of the signs, not just the name of the sign that shows up. These elements and signs that comprise the personality are found in the sun, moon, and rising, so we don't have to concern ourselves too much with our entire natal chart, since the other planets and placements don't directly influence our intrinsic personality. They affect other things like your love life, your karma, your possessions, and finances. So Virgo is the perfectionist sign. They're habituated to spotting flaws and imperfections in people and situations. Sometimes Virgos over-label or over-distinguish, seeing differences in things that are nearly the same or in fact have no perceptible difference. Now, Scorpio is the water equivalent to Virgo. The two are very similar except that they belong to different elements. So Scorpio is similar in that it has the tendency to overread subtle body language and behavior due to the fact that it's highly observant. But this unfortunately leads a person to paranoia and suspicion. Both signs are sensitive to criticism, gossip, a bad attitude, competition, and get jealous very easily. Because they're so detail-oriented, they're perfectionist. Because they're so perfectionist, they're proud. Because they're so proud, they get defensive and take things personally very easily. And small failures and power struggles can lead to strong, unnecessary feelings of inferiority. So when it comes to handling criticism, for Virgo especially, they really can't handle any criticism. Their perfection is calibrated to such a high level that they genuinely think it's not okay to be whatever you criticize them to be. Almost anything you criticize a Virgo for appears to them as a serious shortcoming that they should be ashamed about. But the truth is, for a mature adult, an adult knows that not everything we get criticized for is a big deal. An adult can discern what's shameful and what's acceptable. Virgos can't do this, especially when they're young. They're too perfectionist. Their standards are too high. That is their nature. Every flaw matters to them. So they don't develop a reasonable perception until they're in their 30s. And in some cases, they never loosen up their standards. In my case, for example, when I was 16 in high school, there was a point where I went through a very challenging breakup phase that lasted for months, during which my ex was constantly criticizing me behind my back. And out of those criticisms, there wasn't more than one that I could handle and just be okay with. One criticism was that half the things I said, I didn't know what I was talking about. Well, that definitely shocked and embarrassed me. Another thing she said, very sincerely to me in fact, was that I was a simple person and she needed someone who could understand her problems. Well, I hated that one too because I thought I was a great counselor who could solve anyone's problem. And the concept of being simple had never really come to my mind, considering that everyone else I knew was doing the same things I was. Going to school, playing video games, smoking weed, practicing BMX at the skate park. So, I mean, isn't everyone simple in that respect? I didn't really get it. So to hear that from her for the first time just really threw me off and insulted me at first. This is a very important example because the truth is, I never actually got over that one criticism until I was 25 years old. So it took me a whopping 9 years to realize that first off, she was actually right, relatively speaking. You know, I was kind of a simple person. Really didn't need a lot going on in my life. Didn't need to know how things worked. Wasn't interested. Loved repetition. And second, that there was nothing wrong with being a simple person. I made so many angry, sarcastic memes about the simple person thing back then. Like years later, right? It was so critical. That's how seriously people like me take criticism. Some people really don't know how to handle criticism. They cannot discern what's shameful and what's acceptable. So I was dysfunctionally perfectionist until age 25. So Virgo belongs to the meticulous and detail-oriented element of earth. Scorpio belongs to the nurturing and empathic element of water. Neither Virgo nor Scorpio are air signs, so rather than perceiving the world in a balanced, bigger picture kind of way, assessing both sides of the story, looking at things as a whole, looking at both the good and the bad, considering alternative perspectives, all things that air signs do, which belongs to, I forgot the personality type. It's the yellow one. Earth and water signs tend to get consumed in details and flaws and injustices. When things go wrong in relationships, these two empathetic or empathic signs can drown in their own silence and become lost when they lose their sense of balance or justice. Confusion and words left unspoken are primary pitfalls, as with taking things too seriously. So what Virgoans must realize is that much of the time when they're criticized, it's usually minor. Even the people who point their finger at you may not view you as negatively as you think. They're either in a bad mood and will quickly change their mind about you when they cool down, or they're pointing out something that at the end of the day isn't generally considered that substantial. Something that only you consider to be a big deal and worth feeling insecure over. The challenge with Virgo is that they often grow up assuming that others are just as observant as them and share the same high standards that lead them to view people under the same critical light. We all kind of think that because we all have our own rose-tinted glasses and we just assume that other people see the same way. So this idea that other people are just as critical as them is generally not true. We're all a little bit different. Some people are similar, maybe not to the same extent though. Other signs do not perceive the world in the same way as with such detail and observation. Only a few other similar signs like that, mostly, but Virgo, however, overthinks things the most. And overthinks things, situations, people, really to the extremes. So it doesn't matter what you do or how amazing your profile picture looks, a Virgo can endlessly spot loopholes and flaws in any system or situation. I mean, it's to a point where it doesn't make sense. What Virgoans can learn, however, is that their constant self-improvement tends to be obsessive and simply the result of a weak sense of self-worth. And it can even lead to contradictory behavior. So here are some hypothetical examples of Virgoan overcriticalness or overcriticism. Dumb, he was too much of a nice guy. Naive, slow to speech, simple-minded, shouldn't let others walk all over him. And the reasonable perspective. He wouldn't let others walk over him. Also, you're forgetting that being a simple person is not a bad thing. I mean, we all eventually learn how to speak up in life. Next example. He's just practically minded. Or no, we're still on this one. He's just practically minded and doesn't have interest in those other subjects of subtlety. He doesn't have time for it. Next example, sure, she looks fantastic, but she is far from perfect. Like, all I think about when I look at her are those little embarrassing things that happened, and she said this and that, and this happened. Average perspective. Are you talking about that thing that happened 4 years ago in high school? I mean, sure, we all embarrass ourselves, but seriously, that was high school, and I don't think anyone remembers those events. I completely forgot about that. At some point, you just have to get over yourself and move on. Next example. Ew, his mouth looks huge in this. His face looks so weird. Average opinion. Kind of funny looking, but proves a point for sure. I don't think he's too concerned about how he looks in this. I think he's too old to care and doesn't take himself that seriously. I know, but still. Next example. Didn't this guy Photoshop himself with someone one time to impress his ex? She did or said something to him, and then he retaliated by catfishing with fake Facebook profiles and stuff. What a pathetic weirdo. Forgiving perspective. Well, such is life. That's what happens when someone pushes your buttons to the extremes. I'm sure you would have done the same thing if someone criticized you the way she did to him. He's a cool guy when you get to know him, very down to earth. Next example. Simple guy. There's not much that goes into DJing. He could do better, like film and TV scoring. Actual music theory. This isn't a real job. And the average person might say something like, wow, there's really no pleasing you. Next example. Spicy, great photo. Sharp looking guy. Critical perspective. Weird guy. He's totally not that guy. Maybe now he is, but ideally, I can't take his serious face that seriously. I mean, I knew him in high school, and he was just, I don't know. Reasonable, average, balanced perspective. Again, with the high school references. Come on, those things don't count. Real people aren't perfect. People change. Next example. God, these people are so dumb. They don't even care about what other people think. They should start caring. If they knew how other people were viewing them, they would. They're so crude and careless and irresponsible and ignorant. All they care about is sex and music and partying. I'm sure they're so inarticulate and average. Like everyone, so inarticulate and their vocabulary is lacking. I don't even have a remark for that one. Just silence. Next example. She's troubled, power hungry, narcissistic. Her anger is very childish. Her thinking is very one-sided and narrow. Totally pretentious. Next critical example. He's proud, but of what? I actually proved to him that he isn't the person he flaunts himself to be. And you know what his response was? He just stood down and admitted defeat and then just kept doing his bad boy rebel thing as if I didn't clearly point out that he was a poser. What a fake coward. Next critical example. Kind of sad sight we have here. She looks like a poor, frustrated loner. She's always alone at home, building and making things. The reasonable perspective goes, oh my god. Next example, this person's face and smile annoys me. It's really annoying me. I've had enough looking at her face. And what, she thinks she has what it takes to be a thorough and diligent businesswoman? I bet she hardly has any idea how irresponsible and ignorant she is. All she does is talk like she knows everything and jumps into these roles, and yet she rarely gives the time of day to study a single thing related to the skills she has claims to have. Next example. He's trying too hard to look good. That's all he does in these photos, look good. He needs to loosen up a bit and do something more playful and quirky for once. Next critical, contradictory example. Yeah, it's a funny picture, but I'm not a big fan of this kind of funny quirkiness. I'm an idealist, and clearly this dude is just a dweeb and a goof who doesn't really take himself seriously. I mean, I don't feel sorry for him, but I just generally wish that people were more perfect, This is how some people think, and this is how I used to think when I was a kid. Not everyone thinks like this. Not all young people think like this, but of course, the younger you are, the more critical, the more perfectionist you are. So as silly as these examples might seem, these are precisely the kinds of overcritical and even contradictory perspectives that especially Virgos can have about themselves and others. This amount of criticism causes us to experience analysis paralysis, where no matter what we do or choose or say, we just get so insecure. We care so much about what other people think. We second guess ourselves. And this actually is really bad for speaking up, because if you're really perfectionist, you cannot speak up, because you keep everything you say is like a trap. You get so, you're worried, so whatever you say, you're worried about what the person's going to think. So you can't say anything around people. You're worried that what the person's going to think about your opinion. You're going to think, well, if I say it with too much anger, they're going to think I'm childish and angry, so I can't do that. But then I can't say this because it's going to sound dumb. I don't like the sound of my voice. It's a big reason why youth can't speak up is perfectionism. That's why I couldn't speak up when I was younger. So you have to let all that go and just speak, express yourself. You'll feel so much better. It's worth it. It's better that than just bottling it all up usually. It happens all the time with young Virgos, that inability to decide what one should do with themselves or think of what someone else is going to think of. Yeah, they don't have an off button where they can just let go and accept that something is good enough. So the lesson is, you're doing just fine the way you are, and others recognize that. Here's the dichotomy between a detail-focused person and a more average kind of perception, where someone who can see things as a whole. On the left, the critical perspective or observation says, Dave is a simple guy. Well, actually, no, he's a lazy and irresponsible guy, mostly. Well, actually, then again, he's very good at what he does, but he's narrow-minded. He's a narrow-minded guy. Or maybe he doesn't care. Well, he's a nice guy, and he never gets angry. Actually, no, I do recall that one time he blew up at Jane 3 years ago. Oh, God. But I guess you're right. Dave is a pretty amazing and competent guy once you get past all the details. And then on the right side, the average person just goes, Dave's a great guy overall. Short and simple. These are two opposing opinions from two opposing energies and signs. So if you're too detail-oriented, it's easy to excessively judge and overthink yourself and others, anything. So being the earth energy can develop earth or analytical personality can develop very narrow and extreme views, because they overanalyze. They spot details too much. It's like seeing things with a zoom lens, right? You're aware that that's what you recognize more. That's what you become more aware of. humans have a 180-degree field of view, but what do we really notice? When we're looking around, what we notice is the line of sight, which is a very small area. Very few degrees, it's a few degree area of what we're actually focusing on, and then it gets there's still a little bit of focus, a few more degrees, 10, 20 degrees of slight focus around the subject. And so when you're detail-oriented, all you notice is the flaws or the details, whatever it is. So you see a lot, but you don't notice a lot. And we're generally like that with vision, but in other areas too. So overanalyzing can cause the missing of the bigger picture, not seeing things in perspective in relation to other things. Or it's kind of like viewing the world through a microscope. And the air energy, on the other hand, has more of a habit of creating an average opinion based on the sum of many attributes. All air signs have this intrinsic ability and tendency. So when it comes to pleasing a Virgo, you either have to confuse them by doing and being everything all at once. That way it's hard for them to criticize you for anything. Or you have to just stay completely on top of things and remain flawless, which is extremely difficult, almost impossible. Well, actually, it is impossible. Unless you knew your Virgo friend or partner very well and you did things perfectly all the time. So instead, showing a Virgo or any other critical person that you don't care what others think of you will either greatly impress them or frustrate them because you don't seem to want to change or work on your flaws, or demonstrate to them just how insecure and critical they are, being the most perfectionist sign on the zodiac wheel. Air signs generally have an accurate and high opinion about themselves and other people. Since they always look at things from perspective, they look at the goods and the bads and the goods of a situation, place, or thing. They look at things from perspective. They see things overall. And they're not designed to be perfectionist or extreme. So, for this reason, they're not as self-concerned, they're not conceited. They carry a more forgiving attitude and don't look down on people just for being average or silly or weird or being different or because something bad happened in the past or some conflict. So unlike earth signs who carry stubborn and specific memories from the past, or fire signs who distort their perception with anger and passion, the level-headedness and small ego-ness of the air signs gives them a very reasonable and clear perspective on things. This notorious trait of Virgo of being critical is a prominent trait you find everywhere. There's somebody who has, it could be in the sun, it could be in the moon. It won't have as much influence in the rising. It'll just be like a taste or a flavor. It's there, but not a big part of your life. It's a tendency that typically lasts with the person until they reach adulthood, and it even trails on all the way up until around age 26. I would say that's about when it finally levels out and the standards for themselves and other people become reasonable, like average, like most people, more forgiving. So it takes a very long time to develop this balanced, reasonable, or average adult perspective, right, that a mature adult has. So it's better to learn about this imbalance when you're young, because it's not difficult to understand once it's shown to you. Better to learn this when you're young than to struggle through life, falling into the same mistakes and conflicts and embarrassments that youth experience, learning about this on your own until finally you reach your late 20s and you realize that it wasn't other people that you had to please, but just your own critical perspective playing tricks on you. Because my mind really was playing tricks on me back then. From my experience, I wish I learned this when I was younger. Because I did a lot of strange, obsessive, even creepy things at times just to prove to people, things to people that I didn't need to prove. And really making my life so difficult and creating fiascos. So many proud, petty, obsessive things just to prove some little ability I had that really wasn't worth it in the end. So I wish I'd learned this. So to summarize, these are the negative traits that result from perfectionism. Binary thinker, winner, loser, all or nothing, extremist mentality. Petty, fussy, minutia. Too much fascination with small things in life. Trouble prioritizing what really matters. Perfectionist, overly critical, overly cautious, anxious, insecure. Taking everything in life too seriously. Loss of awareness of the bigger picture, whole story, or other side of the story, due to fixation on details, flaws, or injustices. Overthinking, uncertain of worth, overthinking criticism, feeling the need to prove emotions or abilities to others. Stubborn, proud of countless skills that anyone can learn, small skills. Ashamed of minor events that others don't remember. Over-labeling, over-categorizing, over-distinguishing things, distinctions that don't exist, aren't really there. Just the power of suggestion acting on your mind. Weak personal boundaries. People pleaser. Giving too much, asking for permission when permission's not needed. I used to do that. Changing yourself to look better for others. Rigid, traditionalist. What this can translate to is following rules like a manual or a book and just not using your brain, not thinking about why you're doing certain steps. I've followed rules in books and manuals before without really thinking about what I'm doing, and then realizing, oh, if I had actually thought about it, if I had thought about why I need to put the ties on these loops here, then I would have done it differently. And this can also lead to being soft in the head. So difficulty thinking for oneself, doing things one's own way, being one's own person, living one's own life. So how to stop caring what others think of you? This serves as a big reminder for men especially, because I think statistically men get criticized the most in relationships. A lot of people aren't aware that perfectionism and feeling insecure and embarrassed is a feminine quality. When men discover this, they immediately realize that they've been sitting in their feminine too much, and they snap out of it, so to speak. They don't like a lot of guys don't like the idea that, gee, it's being insecure is a feminine trait. I didn't know that, so maybe I should just stop that. Masculine energy is not petty or complicated. It doesn't complicate things. Masculine energy allows a person to see the overall picture of a thing or situation and prioritize through insignificant details in order to handle the major aspects of a problem or a thing. This energy is very independent because people who have it have an innate ability to just be themselves without shame or the need for approval. If we take the natural element of fire, for example, like a warrior, people with a lot of fire do and say what they please because they feel that right to be themselves very strongly. So they generally don't have much problem with other people's opinions. These kinds of people have an inborn inclination to think for themselves and do things their own way, rather than mimic and adopt the behavior of others. Now, this isn't to say that masculine energy is perfect or the best, doesn't have its own negative traits. All personality types and attributes have their equal and opposite imbalance, in fact. So, for example, although masculine energy is active and imposing and independent, people with too much of it get bored very easily, and they need constant stimulation. They can be impatient, selfish, narcissistic, and they have a lesser capacity for conscious emotions, which leads them to becoming superficial and deceitful and lacking in moral discipline. So by nature, someone with a lot of masculine energy is more likely to cheat on a partner than someone with a lot of feminine energy. Both because of lack of morals and getting bored easily. Because when people with lots of feminine energy, lots of analytical and or amiable energy, they're the marriageable people. They don't get bored. They can last in relationships for years, decades even. And this is statistically true. One thing I recommend everyone do is learn to make other people's opinions irrelevant. Realize that your job in life is to be you, and that you can't please everyone because that's impossible, and it would deny and neglect your own personality or character. You will come off as more certain in yourself if you simply shift your attitude and own yourself. If you own everything about yourself and around other people, including your mistakes and imperfections, it tells everyone that you don't give a damn, you're not insecure, and you know your worth. This shift in attitude alone is very effective, even when others don't agree with you. They see it. If you're not happy with the way someone views you, you gave someone the wrong impression and you're thinking to yourself, they think I'm like that? I didn't know I had so many flaws. I'm not like that. I have to prove myself to them. Well, you might as well just embrace it. Own the character that they think you are, or dismiss the flaw and criticism, and give people a better impression next time. A helpful mindset to carry is the courage to be disliked, which is also the title of a book by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. At one point in the book, the authors say that you may not be able to change the way other people view you, but you can change the way that you view yourself. And I'll add this. In return, this can make people understand how you feel about yourself. In the dating and social arts community, this personal attitude is called your frame. I suppose more so in social arts or some kind of social psychology. It's not originally from dating arts, I guess, but a frame is a term that includes a number of things. Your frame it's a concept, but it holds your unique point of view. It contains your values, your opinions, your attitude. People can sense your frame because it expresses itself in the way you dress, the way you walk, and the way you talk. So if you're very certain about everything, if you're very certain about yourself, this means that your frame is very strong. So no matter what people say or think about you, or your point of view, you rarely second guess yourself or feel the need to change your opinion just to please others. Here's a simple rule that helps clarify what's worth caring about in life. Put it this way, as long as you're not doing anything wrong per se, nothing too extreme or out of the ordinary, if you have a good idea of what is normal, common, and acceptable in the place you live, in your culture, then there's no reason to worry about what people think. So, for example, if somebody doesn't like a certain picture of you on Facebook or on a dating site, well, you're not doing anything wrong because it's just a photo of you. And you can't do anything about your genetics, so you don't worry about it. Another reason why you can stop worrying about what other people think of you is because of what I call the anchor of balance, or the law of balance. The law of balance, or rather the law of average. This rule states that the average person has a lot of potential and is doing something important with their life, because we're all relatively the same as the same species. So we don't have to entertain insecurities like jealousy or criticism. We all have desire. We all want to pursue some kind of career. We're all human. We all want to become something or do something meaningful with our life. So the average person is not going to look down on you and be so critical that they perceive you as below average or no good. If you're dealing with someone like this, it's probably just one person you know in your life. There aren't a lot of people that bad. A strong frame doesn't change shape or form for other people, right? Otherwise, that would mean that it's flexible and weak and malleable and influential. Or rather, impressionable, I mean. You should never be in a position where you're embarrassed about something and just waiting for the other person to change their mind about you. This is very dependent. This is not independent behavior. You never have, and likewise, you never have to be in a place of uncertainty and asking people what they think of you just to make sure that you have their approval. No, this is needy, approval-seeking, dependent behavior. Authentic self-worth is not dependent on other people or circumstances. It's an internal attitude. And you can't control other people's opinions. At the end of the day, there's no guarantee what someone actually thinks of you anyway, even if you try to give them the right impression. If you're quite young and you've just finished high school and are starting to live on your own, this is some advice about, it's kind of related to jealousy. You're starting to realize the different skills, life skills and things you need to know to maintain a living. You were probably encouraged by your parents to keep a backup savings account for emergency, or if you ever lost your job or your ability to work. And maybe they encouraged you to budget your finances with a spreadsheet. There are a lot of life skills that we need in order to get by safely in life. So with that being said, it's possible to become jealous of people and uncertain in our worth when we find ourselves lacking certain skills. If we refer to this chart here, this is a collection of life skills and knowledge prioritized from the most basic and essential to the least essential. As we gradually ascend the triangle in the real world, there are more advanced and intricate things we can get ourselves into, but are more or less optional, like at the top of the triangle. There are 100 different little skills that you can learn that can make you come off as a very on top of it kind of person, a Jason Bourne know-it-all kind of character. But at the end of the day, the only skills and knowledge that are really important are the ones found at the first few levels of the triangle. I'm showing this because I think for young people who are perfectionist, it's easy to notice a lot of little things that people do and have, and begin to lose that certainty in your frame with feelings of inferiority. Because when I was growing up, I used to overthink so many things. So I kind of started life at the top of this triangle and worked my way down to the meat and potato essentials. I mean, there was one point where I was just always wondering if people, budgeted and knew a lot about like mortgages and other life skills and insurance and stuff. And I thought like, gee, should I know about stuff like that? Should I be jealous of this? Should I be more on top of things? I used to sing, and learned dancing, and I dressed well in my teens and 20s, but I was very laid back when it came to life skills. And I also, in terms of my personal interest, I didn't want to get into anything. I don't like studying complicated things, so I only wanted to know the bare essentials that would get me by. For a long time, I never budgeted my money precisely. I just managed it with my head. And I would always confuse my car insurance papers with my registration when showing it to the police. And I didn't care to know about all the sneaky things the government does to make money from us, or what restaurant managers secretly do to their employees' checks and so on. And all of that was basically okay for me because I was taking care of my life essentials. But I would find myself becoming uncertain about my worth when I started to come around people who seemed to just know everything. And especially in the realm of life skills, I was the kind of person who would lease a car but have no idea what I was signing, how much the insurance rate was, or whether or not the interest would change over time. My point is, whatever or whoever you are, you should just own it. There's no use in losing your frame and becoming an insecure person. Insecure about what other people think, unless you're doing really bad things, really bad, creepy, messed up, psychopath things, or you're not doing anything with your life and you're just receiving government support for no reason, and so you can sit at home all day. So I recommend to don't worry too much about how the government works, or legality, or the language of money, or real estate, unless you want to become a lawyer or an entrepreneur. Make that your role in life. A real estate investor, get a good accountant and let them do your taxes. You don't have to know how everything works in life unless it's important, right? I like to know about politics a little bit more, and the government and global crises these days, because I see the importance in it. It's not a trend I'm following. It's not to look smart, but it's because I see the value in it. People like this are preppers, right? You're preparing for world catastrophes, famines, stuff like that, or epidemics and pandemics, things like that. When you adopt a sturdy frame for yourself, you're going from an I am mentality, which is uncertain and approval seeking, always second guessing and wondering what people think, to an I am mentality, which is self-assured and self-approving. So keep in mind that you have your own opinions and way of life that I encourage you to keep. You can't get everyone to admire you. You can't look good in front of everyone. It's impossible. It's too hard. And you'd be very soft in the head and obsessive to try. If you're a laid back person and you're going through life one step at a time, or maybe you're taking your time figuring out what you want to do for your career, there's nothing wrong with that. Just own it. Because one day you might find yourself in a relationship with somebody who's ambitious, and all of a sudden you're getting really insecure and second guessing yourself. You may not know where you want to stand in the relationship, in relation to them, I mean. Are you going to start acting like them so that they don't begin to see you as like lazy or directionless? Or are you just going to continue at the pace you were going because that's you and that's what you're comfortable with? When you're comfortable in your own skin and you accept yourself fully, you take on the I am mentality. Like Popeye. I am what I am. That's me. Take it or leave it. So with this attitude, if you're very self-assured and you're emotionally grounded, even the most harsh criticism can be received. Especially if you don't take your image and reputation too seriously. The ability to not care what others think will endow you with fierce independence. It is a masculine trait. It is a strong trait. And you don't have to be a man to have it. Right? We all have masculine and feminine energies, so it's just a good energy to have, to embody. What snapped me out of my excessive perfectionism when I was a teenager was realizing that it comes from being weak and insecure inside, which also meant that I was not independent. Instead, I was someone who only felt secure when others approved of me. So being independent isn't just about doing things by yourself or living on your own. It means you live your own unique life. You do things your own unique way, and you be your own unique person without caring what other people think of you. Now we're going to get into relationship conflicts for fastidious detail people. Analytical, amiable personality types. Virgo and Scorpio may remember the many favors they've done for their partners that the other party failed to recognize and appreciate. And sometimes your more subtle abilities go unrecognized too. But as a Virgo, as a Scorpio, you don't want to be too proud of these things. They might be less substantial than you think. There are many abilities, skills I had that didn't go quite seen by my partner, and I don't think it really needed to be, because that wasn't really what made up my personality anyway, my overall who I am. And you have to keep in mind that you're not Superman, and you don't have to be. We all have our role, like professionally at least, and you can pick a role as a personality. Like, you don't have to be good at everything. You can choose to just have one or two roles in life. Try not to sweat the small stuff. There's no need to be good at everything, to have a skill in everything. Yep, so the lesson for these archetypes is to balance out perception and never lose sight of the bigger picture. Let go of trivial, unimportant events and confusions. You have to learn this based on the average of what generally most people do in situations. Look at the bigger picture. Look at problems objectively. This is really important. You can't let your emotions get in the way of relationship. We're talking about relationships now, right? So set aside all imagination and theories and just look at the facts. Look at your side of the story. Look at their side of the story. Just the observable facts of the things that actually happened in the relationship. assess both the good and events to make a final judgment as to whether or not the relationship issues were fair or worth holding on to. Think in terms of balance or the average. What would a reasonable average person do? Don't overthink what people say about you. This is one that can eat you up inside, complicating what someone said about you, wondering about it. You know, in my case, at one point, one of the justifications for breaking up with me, my ex-girlfriend said, she just had this kind of uncertain facial expression. She said, I just don't really see you and I together. And it's like, what does that mean? It's so vague. It's so vague. It makes you overthink like crazy. You don't want to do that. It's horrible. I was still so insecure and curious about that for maybe almost 10 years. So the point, really the point is, stop pleasing people. Then you don't have to worry about it, because really, this is what an independent person does. And in meditation, that's what I was told to do. I was told, I saw it. It said, my intuition said to me, Virgo, stop pleasing people. That's the strong, independent thing to do, right? Be certain about how valuable and capable you are based on your age and maybe things like your interests and aspirations. The fact that people develop in relatively the same way, based on the average and based on age, because truth is, people will tend to judge you based on your age. You know, regardless of what your skills are, people tend to judge you based on your age. If they don't know you, know your worth and assume that others know it too. Humans and creatures evolve in waves. So, meaning that we're all at about the same level in terms of abilities and intelligence. If you're the same species, then you're relatively same as the next person. Your partner or ex may be a little bit off or wrong about some things they said about you. Certain details, certain facts, but in general, and I used to not like that, but now that I'm older, I realize that in general, you know, somebody who spends many months or a year with you in a relationship or as a friend, basically, they know who you are. So it shouldn't be necessary to feel so proud or the need to prove certain traits about yourself that you think the other person doesn't perceive. It's not worth it. Think in terms of balance or the average as opposed to idealism, that extreme polarity. The fastidious perspective. I was horrible at this and that back then. I've changed so much now. I'm very proud of who I am today, but still ashamed of who I used to be. I feel the urge to show off my minor improvements to people of the past. The balanced, average, reasonable perspective. Oh, well, we didn't know any better back then. I was as good as anyone else. Well, it wasn't really my forte anyway. I've changed with age, like everyone. It was more of a balancing out of a few traits, nothing worth flaunting. Since men tend to get criticized a lot in relationships, here is some pieces of advice for young Scorpio and Virgo men in relationships. You are a mountain. Nothing shakes you. And also, this is applicable to anybody. Anybody who's in the situation of receiving criticism or feeling the sense of jealousy or competition, this can apply to anybody. Let's say all of a sudden she or him or her, they seem to be more ambitious or competitive around you. Are you going to let this confuse you and phase you and take you out of your masculine center of balance? We all have a masculine center of balance. A masculine side. The same idea goes for her criticism against you. A balanced masculine man moves at his own pace, according to his agenda, independently of others people's opinions. He is not a people pleaser. If he wants to compete, become more ambitious, or make improvements to himself, he does so out of his own passion and will. The Virgo man or Scorpio man in relationships. You are a mountain, nothing should faze you. Try not to overthink anything she says or does. Be natural and never worry. Let's say they seem to know everything. Life skills, politics, etc. They probably just have a general knowledge like most people. You might be overthinking how much they really know. You're likely a bit of a hermit, but this doesn't mean that you can't be the leader. Leadership is all in your attitude, actually. So know what you want, be direct, talk about any plans that come to your mind, call the shots, instigate, lead. If they won't let you lead because they're so forward, you can either consider finding someone else, because generally speaking, women, for example, like men who lead in relationships. So it's a bummer if she's leading too much, she can't let you be in that masculine role. You can find someone else, or you'll just have to accept that and be okay with her leadership. Let's say that at some point your partner or ex starts to get turned off by you. Maybe it's your silliness, your disinterest in certain subjects, or your quirks. This is what I mean by being a people pleaser. All of a sudden, you're finding yourself insecure and self-pitying and second-guessing yourself over somebody else's criticism. Don't give in or change yourself just to try to look better for them. You can't please everyone. If they don't get over your insignificant flaws, you will. Don't wait for other people to look at you in a better way, because you'll never know when that happens. It's needy. Just be yourself, be natural, and stop worrying. Now, in regards to relationships, I want to mention a very crucial and common mistake that fastidious people make during conflicts, and that is vindictiveness. So what I mean by this is specifically a strong but very unreasonable or unjustifiable amount of vengefulness against somebody without realizing the good side of the situation. Vindictiveness easily arises in us when we either become very upset by something that someone's done, or because we have a fastidious and pessimistic nature, right? Because we're either analytical or amiable. Those energies of water and earth and water. So the person does something bad to us, and then we fixate on the injustice and ignore everything else they do. This is the problem. So I'll give you my example. During that half-year breakup conflict phase, I became so affected and vindictive from all the criticism and rude attitude I was receiving that I didn't really remember the few times this person actually tried to be nice to me, which she did a couple of times. Even on the occasion when she was a couple months in or so in this phase, because my self-esteem was so low by that point after receiving her criticism, I didn't think her kindness was sincere. I thought she was secretly looking down on me. So when a year had passed and she continued to be rude to me and kind of ignoring me, that's all I could see. But the truth was that her anger and bad attitude had always been a part of her personality since the day she was born. So our breakup fiasco it lasted more like a few months. It didn't last a year. I thought it just kept going because I didn't recognize or remember the times she was actually nice to me. And I didn't recognize that, I didn't really see that her nature is to be really bad like that, really angry and reactive. So you see, the lesson is that if you're too detail-oriented or emotional, you have a tendency to focus on negative things too much, to the point where you lose awareness of the good things or the bigger picture, or you're not seeing things in perspective. It's very harmful, right? It doesn't make sense to be so vindictive against somebody if, you think they did a bunch of bad things and really it was just one bad thing, and you didn't see all the good things they did. So you have to go by the facts. The Buddha taught that we should not invest in what he called the sign of things, the sign of the beautiful, the sign of the ugly, or the sign of the pleasant and unpleasant sensations and situations. This includes the pleasant feeling we get from material gain. The sign of something was his term for the endless false concepts and labels and meanings we create and associate with things. So instead, we must get used to seeing things as they are, without biases from the ego. Because the ego tends to either really like and prefer something or really dislike something. And this is not an accurate way of seeing. In relationships, for example, we might hold on to the expectation that someone will change one day. And out of that expectation, we might carry a false hope for them. But what if they don't stop their alcoholism? What if they don't stop their verbal or physical abuse? Then that hope was a sign or misinterpretation of something that seemed beautiful, but was really a fantasy. So with this, whenever we're dealing with conflicts and confusion, we should always just look at the facts. Whether those facts come from direct observation or from something like a legal document. Because the worst thing that we do to ourselves and others is assume and theorize based on nothing. Nothing but a few paranoid observations that perhaps serve as some evidence, but are not really proof. So maybe we started work with someone one day and they walked in and didn't say hi to us. Didn't start conversation with us. And immediately we began assuming that they don't like us or care about us. Well, when I heard this example from one of my managers, she told me that she was very preoccupied that day and simply didn't have the energy or time to talk. And she didn't think it was a big deal because she works there all the time and has already talked to everyone. But that wasn't how the other person took it. The employee felt so rejected that she called the head chef that day crying about how the manager doesn't like her or possibly doesn't like her. And she felt just so disliked and unwelcome. But as for myself, I heard the truth of that situation because I saw the truth because the manager just told me how she felt that day, which was that she was just tired and busy and really very preoccupied. She was just trying to get her work done. Maybe it was a bit inconsiderate that she didn't say hi, but it's not like she had anything against the employee. So that was an example of taking a situation negatively and personally. Now here's another example of a slightly different scenario in which a different manager of mine let his emotions distort his reality. So he believed something about me that was totally made up by him. What happened was that I had been a little bit sloppy with my work the previous night. So I left a few too many dishes at the dishwashing station and I forgot to put the removable door back on the line cook fridge, which was the standard procedure after we saran wrapped the food inserts inside. These were minor slip-ups, but he noticed it. And on top of that, he had just found out the other day that his uncle, that he hasn't spoken to in 10 years, had just passed away. So he proceeded to explain to me or how sad he was and how unmotivated he was to continue working that day. So I told him that I could take over all his tasks for the day. But then after some exchanges, he just began unloading all his baggage on me and spiraling down into this bitter, sarcastic, vindictive rambling about all the things I do that dissatisfy him. Eventually, after listening to him complain for a bit and jumping through some of his hoops, like making me go to the fridge to get some food, even though he knew it was in the freezer, he mentioned that he gives me all these privileges, even though he knows that all I do at work is talk to the girls and during my shift and then drink after. And that right there was the wrong view. So this last remark he made was completely made up, whether he knew it or not, because the truth was that I had basically stopped talking to all the people, all the servers at work, long before this manager started working with us. Just because we were always too busy to talk about anything, and that whole getting to know you phase had long passed. Furthermore, I didn't even drink back then. So what was this guy talking about making this claim? He was so bitter and vindictive that this fantasy of me came to his mind, and he believed it, even though he never witnessed the facts to confirm it. In other similar cases, especially if we feel offended and angry, we take things negatively, even when people are trying to be honest and sincere with us. So for these couple of cases, these are examples of how our emotions can get in the way of our discernment when we let ourselves get triggered. Emotion is a major element that primarily belongs to the amiable or supportive personality type. So since I mentioned Scorpio in the beginning, water signs need to keep their emotions under control when they're in conflict. Fire signs too, because they get angry easily. But that's part of the driver personality. That's a different personality type. Here's an example of taking things personally. I was at work one day, portioning the half-baked chicken wings, and I suggested to everyone around me that maybe we should mix the wings up so that each bag contained 5 wings and 5 drums. This is all I said. But the girl who baked the wings started debating and kind of arguing with me about it. And I had to assure her and repeat myself that I wasn't criticizing her baking. I was just giving a random suggestion because that's how we did it at my previous job and we weren't doing it here. So when we get ideas about people and concepts, and then we just imagine how people are and come up with assumptions and theories, these are all just fantasies. We cannot draw conclusions from them. So then, how do we develop right view? The Buddha had a rule about how we should handle any information we come across. What he said was this: do not believe anything simply because you have heard it. Do not believe in anything simply because it is spoken and rumored by many. Do not believe in anything simply because it is found written in your religious books. Do not believe in anything merely on the authority of your teachers and elders. Do not believe in traditions just because they have been handed down for many generations, but only after observation and analysis. When you find that things agree with you because of reason and are conducive to the benefit of others, should you accept it and live by it. This is a very good reminder about all the countless things we read and hear about every day, especially in this information age. He makes a good point. You're never guaranteed that something is true until you see for yourself. And when he states that we should analyze or scrutinize information, what he's actually referring to is meditation. in addition to any other effective means. Analytical, retrospective meditation. Because aside from scientific experiments, which are not always possible or practical for the everyday person to run, meditation is really the best way to confirm anything. It is truly remarkable that all of us have a psychic power that allows us to see the truth of things. We all have this ability. This is why many Buddhist schools make their students practice retrospective meditation at the end of the day. It's so that they can review all of the collected impressions from the day and discern what happened and learn from it. This is not the same. This is not mindfulness. This is not jhana. This is not samadhi meditation. Those are more general. Those are, mindfulness is actually preliminary. It's just for concentration. And then when you get into real meditation, you go into the jhanas or samadhi or dhyana. But that's general. You're just extracting your consciousness and freeing it from conditions and just being completely present with the here and now. That's a great meditation, but it doesn't give you precise, specific answers and clear sight on a particular issue or problem. So if they didn't say it, don't think it. If they didn't say that criticism about you, then you shouldn't assume that they're thinking it. It's unnecessary. It's unhealthy. Because most of the time, it's just your own insecurity and paranoia talking. I have another example, actually, that's coming to mind. When this Middle Eastern guy that I met at the gym one time, he had this idea that Chinese people or Asian people don't like him because of his race. I don't know where he got this idea, but, and there was this Asian, maybe Chinese lady who walked by with her little kid, and he thought the kid was so cute, so he kind of pointed at the kid and made this he said something, he made this gesture or said that, oh, this is such a cute kid, look how cute that little boy is. And I saw the woman's expression. She just smiled. She thought that was cute, that he thought her son was so adorable. And he said, did you look at her face? See, she doesn't care. She doesn't like that I did that. And I'm thinking, there's no proof of that. I saw a crack of a smile when you were pointing and saying, oh, look how cute that little boy is. That's all I saw. How can you assume that she doesn't like you or doesn't like that you said that? There's no proof. Another essential practice, which is a given, as fundamental before anything else, is to communicate thoroughly. If you're uncertain about something, then just be upfront and ask people what they mean by the things they say and do. Really, this is so important because I used to not speak or ask things because I thought, oh, maybe I'm going to look stupid if I ask, or maybe I'm supposed to know. But it's really, that eats you up when you do that, and then you just regret it. You just keep wondering about why they said that thing. Just ask. It's the best thing, right? That way, you don't have to get angry. You don't have to be silent. Just ask. It's the best thing to do. Then at the end of the day, after we've collected some impressions to look into, we meditate. And since we're working on developing right view, since that's the topic of this, ultimately that's the topic of this presentation, the type of meditation we need is retrospection, or analytical meditation. This is known as vipassana.